This is the Communities Committee meeting of the 7th of June 2022, and I'd just like to welcome all the councillors that are in attendance today, the officers and those watching at home, to the first Communities Committee of the new administration. As the new convener of the Communities Committee, I first of all want to acknowledge the work of my predecessor in this role, former Councillor Mark Salmond. He always made it clear that his door was open to discuss any ideas that committee members wanted to take forward. And this is something that I think was very good, and it's something that I want to carry on. We can see from the papers that the remit of this committee is absolutely huge. And Mark did this role to the best of his ability, and we might not have agreed on things a lot of the time, but I respect the fact that he fought for what he thought was right and was fair when chairing the meetings and the MOGs. This is something that I too also want to carry on. So I want to set the tone straight away that the door's open. It's got to be fair, it's got to be balanced, and that's how I intend to conduct things. This brings me on to a man who's been a public servant longer than I've been alive. This is Ian Cochrane's last Communities Committee. It's actually his last committee full stop, as his last work day is on Friday. For 39 years, he's been a public servant, with 24 of those serving the people of Angus. I could go into a full episode of This Is Your Life here, but we kind of need to get on. And I also need to mention one of the hardest working men on Angus Council has ever seen, Douglas Hill, who is also retiring at the same time as Ian. I'd like to thank both for their professional and technical advice, their expertise and leadership in areas of their responsibility over the years. And on behalf of everyone at Angus Council, wish them all the very best in their retirement. Councillor Fairweather, I believe you want to say something here.
Yes, right. Thank you, convener, and first of all, can I congratulate you on your new role. But just to reiterate what you've said regarding Mr. Cochrane, I had a wee chat with him yesterday, after a previous meeting, and I want to again wish him all the very best in his retirement alongside Douglas Hill. Thanks, convener.
You're welcome. Okay, so further ado, we move on to the first item on the agenda, which is our apologies and substitutions. Mr. McCaskill, do we have any apologies or substitutions today?
Yes, convener, we have apologies from Councillor Clark, with Councillor Bell substituting.
Okay. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on the papers today? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, we move on. So we go to item 3, committee membership. The committee is asked to note the membership is as agreed at the meeting of the council on the 26th of May 2022 and as shown on the covering letter of this agenda. Do we note that?
Noted.
Okay. Move to item 4. The remit of the committee. The committee is asked to note the remit of the Communities Committee.
Noted.
Okay, on to the minutes. So we've got the minutes of the previous meeting. It's got to be agreed as a correct record. The committee is asked to note 5A, and understand that Councillor Brays, Duff, Fotheringham, McLaren and Stewart were there. So can we declare that that's accurate?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Special meeting 5B. Is that an accurate minute?
Agreed.
The Land Reform Subcommittee is for noting, and the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee is for noting. Do we note them?
Noted.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 6, the appointment of subcommittees and member officer working groups of the committee. And for that, if we could look at the items in order. We're looking to note to appoint in terms of Standing Orders 33 and 34 elected members to the undernoted subcommittees, and where appropriate to appoint a convener and vice convener of the subcommittees. So we're looking at the executive subcommittee, which is 3 elected members. That would take up the convener and the vice with 1 other nomination. So is there anybody else looking to be on the executive subcommittee? Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Fairweather, you're muted. David, you're muted.
Sorry, convener. Should know by right. We should know better by now with these machines, shouldn't we? Can I put forward Councillor Tommy Stewart to be on the executive subcommittee, but in interest of fairness, there is a non-aligned member in the committee, and if Councillor Scott wishes to take that up, we would have no qualms.
Councillor Scott, is that something you'd be interested in?
I'm quite happy to let Councillor Stewart go on there. Thank you, Phil.
Is Councillor Stewart happy?
Yeah, I done it the last time, last administration, so I'd be quite happy to do that, Matt.
Excellent. Can I just go through like that, Donald?
Yeah, convener, just as a seconder, just so we can formally ratify that appointment.
Councillor Fotheringham?
Thank you, convener. Yes, I'm quite happy to second Councillor Stewart's nomination for that committee. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, and you want to pop your hand down, Councillor Fairweather, unless you've got something else?
Yeah, I'm trying. It's not going. Oh, there you go.
No worries. Okay, we look at the Land Reform Subcommittee, which is 2 elected members plus the member of the ward affected. I understand that's again the convener and the vice, and we don't need to nominate anyone else because, as it says, it goes to the ward affected. The Environmental Appeals Committee, which is 3 elected members, again, convener and vice, and we're looking for 1 other. Councillor Fairweather? Mind that mute button. Councillor Fairweather, you're muted. You're muted. There it is.
Obviously, my experience in doing appeals, I think, would be beneficial. But again, in the interest of fairness, there is the non-aligned, and that's Councillor Scott. If Councillor Scott wishes to take that role, I will have no problem.
I'm quite happy for you to continue, Councillor Fairweather, if you've got experience.
Thank you.
And do we have a seconder, or does Councillor Scott count as a seconder, or Councillor Fotheringham?
I'll second if needs be.
Excellent. Okay, so are we ready to move on to 6.2, to note the remit of each of these subcommittees? So that noted. And then 3, to appoint elected members and a chairperson to each of the working groups. So this is looking at the MOGs, the member officer working groups. Wait, if I just get my papers down to where I want to be. For the administration group, we are looking at, for the flood risk management, Councillor Cowdy, Councillor Duff and Councillor Braze. And we're looking for, well, it says for political balance, but it's how we want to work out between the committee, really. So it's 2 and 1, or it's, how you want to work it. So, Councillor Fairweather.
I would look for the land flood one, putting forward Councillor Ronnie Proctor and Councillor Ian McLaren.
Okay, have we got a seconder?
Councillor Fotheringham, I believe.
Just to check, Donald, do we not need a seconder for ours then, if we need a seconder for theirs?
Yes, convener, I was going to go back to that part, yes.
See. So do we need to go back to all the other ones we've done?
No, I have a seconder for you. It's a seconder for this that I'm looking for.
So who's seconding me on our one?
I'll second that, convener.
Excellent. Okay. And we've got Councillor Fotheringham seconding Councillor Fairweather's suggestion.
Yeah, that's correct, convener. I'm quite happy to do that, both members. Thank you.
Councillor Scott, are you going to take the non-aligned position, or are you looking to just leave that to the rest of the committee?
Who's up for that? Who wanted that?
So this is the flood management member officer working group, and it's the political balance is 3 admin, 2 non-admin, and 1 non-aligned.
I'll be happy to go on that.
And it'll work the same way on the road safety. Are you the only? You're the only non-aligned.
I am.
Yeah. So-
second her. I'll second.
Thank you.
Excellent. And we need to elect a convener for that position, for that member officer working group. I would quite happily go forward for that. If that. Oh no, sorry, I can't because I'm not on that one. Apologies. I nominate Councillor Duff for that one.
I'll second.
Sorry about that. Guess what, I'm going to nominate myself for the road safety MOG, which is next. So yeah, we're looking to appoint the same 6 elected members for the road safety member officer working group. And for the administration, we're looking at myself, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Clark, and Councillor Cowdy. And if I could get a seconder for those suggestions.
I'll second, Mark.
And Councillor Fairweather?
Yes, I'm going to put forward Councillors Craig Fotheringham and Councillors Ian McLaren, and Councillor Tommy Stewart will second.
Yeah, happy to second that, Mark.
And Councillor Scott, it's the same sort of situation. Are you happy to go on that?
Yeah, happy.
And you've got a seconder?
I'll second.
Excellent. And I'll put myself forward for the chair of that, if I could get a seconder, or someone else will fancies it.
I'll second.
Councillor Meakin? Mr McCaskill, is this okay?
Yes, that's fine. Got all that. Thanks, convener.
Excellent. So we can move on, I think. So now we have to note the remit of each of the working groups. So we're going to be okay to note that.
Noted.
And we need to appoint elected members in 6.5 to the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee. So that's 6 elected members with a minimum of 4 from both Arbroath wards and at least 2 members of the Communities Committee. So I understand that. Well, Councillor Fairweather, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, right, yes, Chair. Right, obviously there's a split between the wards 6 and 7. Right, the way it is at the moment. But I'd like to put forward for the opposition, Councillor Louise Nicol, and myself to be on the Harbour Board.
Do you have seconders there?
Councillor Fotheringham, yeah.
Yes, happy to second that, convener. Thank you.
From our position, I believe it was Councillor Cowdy, Councillor Durno. Councillor Cowdy, can you remind me, who else was coming from our group on that one? I've not got it noted down. Was Councillor Shepherd as well?
Let me just have a look and see if I've got it noted down. I don't have it noted down, unfortunately, as to whether Councillor Shepherd was available or not for that one.
I'll open it up then to the other members. I think Councillor Shepherd was. So if you put Councillor Shepherd, could I get a seconder for Councillor Durno, Councillor Cowdy and Councillor Shepherd?
I can second.
Which leaves a gap of 1. I think. So does anybody want to be on the Arbroath Harbour Board? Oh, okay. So we've not got any hands up. Mr. McCaskill, can you advise what the steps are here? Oh, wait a minute, I've got some Councillor Duff. Apologies.
Yeah, absolutely not volunteering. I just wonder perhaps if an Arbroath member who isn't on this committee might be interested on standing on this subcommittee. That would be my suggestion. Maybe we can take it outside the meeting. I don't know whether it's possible to do that.
Through you, convener, I think it's for the parent committee, for the communities committee to make the appointments, but the Joint Consultative Committee could run with the 5, and they only meet on, I think it's a quarterly basis, so we could make an appointment at the next Communities Committee if a member came forward, if that was acceptable to members.
We've got a hand up from Councillor Brace. Thank you, Mr McCaskill. Councillor Brace.
Well, actually, I was just going to suggest what Councillor Duff just suggested, on the basis that it's better to have someone from out with this committee who's keen, rather than someone who's maybe being press ganged into service in this quite important committee.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. So basically what Mr McCaskill said is the committee can run with 5 and we can seek a new member in the near future at one of the next meetings. We'll be happy to move with that then.
Okay. Agreed.
Excellent. And apologies, I thought I had everything fully in order, and clearly that one I was missing a name. So we move on to note the remit of the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee.
Noted.
Yeah. Noted. Okay, so we move on then to item number 7, which is the Cycling, Walking and Safer Routes Fund Programme of Works. I'd like to ask Walter Scott to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, members. The report in front of you today, which I hope we've had the opportunity to read through, is one of our annual reports on the Cycling, Walking and Safer Routes programme of projects. It was previously titled the Cycling, Walking and Safer Streets, but it was changed to be better representative of the projects that it was working on. It's a project, is a budget which has gone, comes from Scottish Government. It's gone up this year from a total of 35 million, from 24 million from last year, and the uplift in the Angus Council allocation of that has gone from 509,000 last year to 741,000 pounds this year. So a significant commitment of funding towards active travel. And the money is there in the fund, and the programme is there to support the delivery of our own active travel and sustainable transport strategy and action plan. And that really sets down how we will meet the Scottish Government strategic aims as published in Transport Scotland's active travel framework. And that framework sets out the policy and approaches to improving the uptake of walking and cycling in Scotland for travel, recreation, and recognise the importance of making high quality walking, cycling and wheeling infrastructure available to all. In terms of the report itself, if I could guide members through to the appendices. Appendix 1 shows the progress that has been made on last year's projects, the £509,000. There were 8 projects approved at this stage last year, one of which was not able to progress due to technical issues, and therefore one of the projects came up from the pipeline and was fed into the programme there. So the footpath improvements between St Margaret's Park, Forfar and Lunan Head were included. And what hopefully the list shows you there is the range of projects that were delivered last year. There's budgets and the costs for delivery there. Some have gone pretty much on the mark. Others have gone up because of increasing the scope slightly and moving them through to design stages for some of the study work that we have there. The Appendix 2 is this year's programme of works. There's 12 projects. There's a mix of actual physical delivery and studies moving forward. There's a range of those projects right across Angus, so it does have a good geographical spread, and there's a range of costs from relatively low costs for undertaking some physical works to more significant works to improve links between our key locations in villages and primary schools. What I would note for members is there is an uplift that's included within that cost to cover the risk of inflation. And therefore that is included within that overall price. I'll direct members to Appendix 3, if I may. This is our pipeline. This is the rest of our pipeline of projects, and members will hopefully note that some of the projects that have been on that pipeline have been moved up and do now appear on this year's programme. And that would be our intention, that we do feed through as many of these projects that remain viable into the CDOSL funding or any additional funding that we have. So all of these projects are viable and therefore is a case of seeking the necessary funding for them. There are other projects in terms of active travel, most notably the Arbroath A Place for Everyone, which doesn't form part of this report, but it is certainly one of the pipeline projects, but not that it's identified within Appendix 3. And then finally, in terms of Appendix 4, there's a graphical representation to illustrate to members and to the public and anyone reading the report as to where the spread of the projects are. And members will note that there is a good spread around the coastal towns, but also in terms of the towns within Angus as well. So we do seek to have a good representation of active travel, so that we are connecting within villages, within towns, but also the interconnection between them as well. So I'm very happy in terms of to take any questions, convener, if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'm going to take them in the order that they actually came up there. And typically, I think what we've seen is we've gone questions, comments, but I'd quite like to see us, because the meetings have dragged on in the past a lot, can we do questions and comments together? So ask your questions, make your comment. Let's get, let's try and get the agendas. I'm not trying to finish the meeting early, but for future, when the agendas are a bit bigger, it'll help us, I think, in the long run. So Councillor Fairweather, then Councillor Cowdery.
Right. Thank you very much, convener. What I'd just like to say is I very much welcome the support from Walter Scott. I think he's done, him and his team have done a terrific job, and you can see the way the projects are falling. It's a huge range over Angus, and I think that's tremendous. But also the foresight to look forward at what we can do and what we can't do. It's very important. Walter mentioned active travel, and obviously mentioned a particular project in Arbroath. That project will be revolutionary, for Arbroath going forward. It just shows you just how important these funds are, to Angus, and it would be folly for us not to take advantage of the monies that are available. This all these projects will be a huge benefit to the residents of Angus. I'd just like to go to Appendix 2, and I know there's a number of projects there that other members might want to speak about, but the one that came to my attention was number 6, and that was the Angus disused railway lines. So I'll just be putting in now, I welcome the feasibility study for this, and certainly I would be promoting a route from Elliot to Arbroath, the old Elliot, well, I think it was the old Forfar railway line. That would link into a number of paths leading out from Arbroath, which would be heading towards Forfar, but also then south, heading towards Carnoustie and Dundee, and joining that all together. So that would be welcomed. Thank you.
Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you, convener. So first of all, in my role as environment and active travel spokesperson for the new administration, I just want to say how delighted I am to see that this is such a core part of Angus Council's programme of works going forward. It's obviously hugely important for a range of reasons. I think one thing that I've noticed about active travel locally, nationally and internationally is that it has been very much around a recreational use. So people have been focused on active travel in their spare time, in their holidays, having a nice time. And I think what would be brilliant is if we can really now move the thinking on and look for it to be a core part of day-to-day life. So using walking and cycling as a means to get to work, get to the shops, anywhere you're going from A to B on a day-to-day basis. My question for Walter on this is that to make that achievable, the connectivity, which you mentioned, needs to be pretty consistent around Angus. And so I wondered if it was possible to integrate into the strategy going forwards a very holistic bird's eye view of all these projects in a way that means that if any gaps do come up, you can identify them very quickly and we can work on a way of tackling them and just making sure that the routes run smoothly around the whole of Angus.
Through you, if I may, Convener. Yes, it's something that we are giving some active attention to. I'm working with my colleague Audrey Meehy in terms of bringing this together, and rather than having the likes of this report, which is a particular fund on which we did public consultation and we brought that together, our intention is to try and open that up for the rest of the year and make that as map-based and accessible as possible, so that we can get experiences from people who are travelling, using our networks, identifying the issues, what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, and therefore that will give us a much better view of all the issues. And in mapping those out, what the intention is that will identify where we've got particular areas where we do need to increase the quality of our infrastructure to get the most benefit out of that. And you're absolutely correct in saying, Councillor Cowdery, it's travel in general. It's travel of all sorts, be that for business, for pleasure, for education and whatnot. It's very much about the full range of travel options.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks for this report, Walter. Really pleased to see much more engagement with the communities on this, and I guess I wanted to reflect the work that officers have been doing with people in the village of Airlie. They're keen to get a pathway, and I've just been assured this morning that officers are keen to keep that on the kind of list that's maybe not in the paper, but I hope will emerge in time, because it's quite an important one. I just wondered, I guess tying in with what Councillor Cowdery was saying, how much sort of flexibility and give and take there might be, because I really see this fund has gained in popularity from our communities. People are much more aware of it now, so it'll be great to see more engagement and more evolution of it, and also around the railway network. Will you be proactively engaging with existing groups, for example, the Newtile Railway Path Network Group, who've done a huge amount of work looking after that network on their own, really, as far as I'm aware? It would be really good to make sure that people don't miss out on that when they've got perhaps long-term ambitions that could tie in really well with what we are trying to do as well. Thanks.
Through you, Convener. Yes, Councillor Bell, there's a long list which we have gone through our analysis, and it's really the top 12, the affordable 12 we have here. We identify within the pipeline additional projects, those that are of particular merit, but there are dozens and dozens of other projects which we don't ignore, which we do take forward. And you've mentioned one in Airlie in that regard. So it may well be that at some stage during the year there is opportunities to present themselves that project in itself can be progressed, or others can be progressed. And that's our intention, to rather than making this a once a year opportunity. This is much more about opening up our eyes and ears to be listening to see what is going to be out there, and that would include the likes of Newtile and the Sidlow Path Network. That work is going on there. The substantive progress identified in that respect, but it's undoubtedly, and when you touch on the railways, this is inherently about engaging with our community, identifying where they may be able to do things that we can't do, seek agreements with landowners that perhaps we're not as good at in that respect. So it's very much about building that community involvement and community ownership for each and every one of these projects, and that's something that we're really keen to be progressing with as we move forward with this programme of active travel, that each one of these projects will have champions out there, and there'll be not officers' faces attached to them. It'll be those who are using the routes and who are promoting those routes.
Thank you, Walter. Bill, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just really two comments from me. I think first I would perhaps, wearing my finance hat, note at 6.1 that this is ring-fence money from Scottish Government, so we're grateful to receive that, and it's clearly an additional sum of money. It's not coming out of the roads budget, so I think that's pleasing to see. On a personal basis, I'm pleased to see at the bottom of Appendix 2 the Marykirk to Hillside feasibility study for a possible route. Interestingly, from taking Councillor Cowdery's point, the person who first drew that to my attention was someone who wanted to commute by bike from somewhere on the Aberdeenshire. I've been out on site looking at it with an officer some time ago. It's got its challenges, but it has attractions, obviously, both for people who want to cycle for work, but also for recreational cyclists. So I think it's some good work that's been pleased to see it progress, and certainly got my support.
Do you want to comment there, Walter? Are you happy for us to move on? Okay, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. Well, like others, I'm just delighted to see the spread of paths that's on here, because I've gone on and about the coastal side getting quite a lot of paths and the inland parts not getting so many, but this is a great spread, so I'm really pleased. I would like to just ask that perhaps if there's a possibility for local members to have a chat about some of these things prior to it appearing in front of us at a meeting like this, it would be really helpful. I know that takes a bit of time, Walter, but I think it would be really good. Can I just ask a couple of questions? One is on Appendix 2, the first one, the Forfar Loch improvements, which are very much needed, especially because we've got the park run every Saturday now, and it's been a bit wet recently, so that will be a great thing. But could you tell me if any of that money is going to be spent on the road into and past the caravan park? That's a real kind of road which floods terribly badly. So I wonder if that one could be considered within that amount of money. It is a big amount of money, so I was thinking maybe it would be. Well, just go on to the next one, Convener.
Give them both, please.
Right. It's just, there's one on Appendix 3, which is footpath past Forfar Golf Course. Now, I know this is in the future, but I really would like to see this Murton at the heart of it, because Murton is a real destination now. And I am very concerned about people walking along that very narrow road where there is no pavement. So I'd love to see this going, but the footpath past Forfar Golf Course could be very long for walkers. It'd be great for cyclists, but not so sure about walkers. And I would prefer to see it on the left-hand side of the road, but that's in the future, and it would be really good to talk about that if possible. Thank you, Convener.
Through you, Convener. Yeah, in terms of the local member briefings, I think the timing and with the election and whatnot, it took that, even the possibility of that, away from us this particular time and this particular cycle, which is one of the reasons why we're keen to open this up to not just be a once a year activity linked directly to the CWSR. What I am intending to do is, on the basis of needing to share some more detail on the descriptions and what these projects mean, is that I'll be seeking to brief members and do that on a local level to give you a bit more detail on what the projects are, what involvement you might wish to take yourself, and ideally where some of the community involvement and the community volunteers may be coming from as well. So that is, whilst it's not explicitly in the report, it is something that we'll be undertaking in the next few months, so that we are getting that full engagement on the individual projects. In terms of the two projects you mentioned there, Councillor Devine, Forfar Loch is the path only in that regard. Whilst there's a huge amount of flexibility within CWSR and the funding and interpretation of that, then improving an access road to get to a path may be a little bit of a stretch, but it's certainly something more general I can take away and look at the issues that you highlight there, and I will do that. And in terms of the golf course, yeah, and we've discussed this ourselves before out with the committee as to the opportunity to link to Muirton, given the inherent benefits of that for visitors and for the business that is there. That project has been close to being progressed at times, but I'm very keen that we get it right and we don't rush into doing it on the wrong side of the road without the right link. So I think that project deserves something a little better thought out, and ultimately that does take a little bit longer, but it's a firm member of the Appendix 3 pipeline, and at some stage we would hope to be bringing that one up the appendices and forward for delivery.
Thank you.
Is that everything, Lynn? Are you happy there?
Yes, I am. I just wondered if Walter was aware of the path out at Lure that has been done by volunteers. It was opened at the weekend, so that was good to see.
Yeah, we sometimes find out about things on the grand opening, which is fabulous to see these things, but I think that's where we do need to improve some of our connections, because maybe we could have made it even better, but it is great to hear about these community initiatives and improvements that are being made.
Thank you. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much, Convener. First of all, my warmest congratulations on your appointment. I didn't say earlier, but absolutely seeing you great there. And I would just like to reiterate the comments that were made about Ian Cochrane and Douglas Hill, two great people who sadly missed by the council. My point is first of all to thank and congratulate the team who have done the Canorby footpath. I think it's absolutely great and it has been well used, and Walter, thank you for that. And I just wondered if there is any update, although I see it on one of the tables, about the Sidlaw Paths network. Is there an update on that? As I am now no longer on TACTRAN, which is a great disappointment to me, but I still like to keep my finger in the pulse.
Through you, Convener, yes, the project, the Sidlaw Path network, which we should have called this something other than that, because there's a separate group that is identified for that. That project is continuing. There's a bid this year going into the TACTRAN administered Active Travel Development Fund, and that will allow us to take it through some of the from feasibility onto some development of options, and that will then put us in a much stronger position to be submitting for funding applications and maybe CWSR in future years for physically making those improvements. So it's certainly a very active project. If it's not on the list in terms of the report, Councillor Proctor, it should be. So that's an oversight on my part if it is not there. So my apologies for that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Melville.
Thanks very much, Convener. I just want to say I'm very glad to see an appendix to the link between Kellis and Murrows Primary School. That has a special significance to me because I am a Murrows Primary alumnus, you might say. I also want to welcome I think it's a 45% increase in the funding from the Scottish Government, and note 3.1 in the report, which says that there is going to be scope for further increases in that funding. As has already been said, obviously active travel is going to be a key part of our measures to tackle climate change and also encourage healthier living. So do you have a ballpark figure, Walter, for roughly the amount of extra funding that we could expect in the coming years? And if so, how that increases our capacity to deliver more active travel projects? Thanks very much.
Through you, Convener, yes, thanks, Councillor Melvin. That's well observed in terms of the uplift this year. The anticipation, and I'm involved through my professional society in discussions to develop the funds with Transport Scotland, is that we will see increases in excess of what we've seen this year. That is certainly the intention. And as may have been noted, there is a commitment to 10% of the transport budget, or a minimum of £320 million by the year 2024-25. I get my 20s in place there. And if there was an exponential increase in the funding from last year to this year and on to that, then that is something that we will see the potential for a multi-million-pound fund each year, which is one of the reasons why we're very keen to promote this pipeline of projects, so that we're not starting from scratch on the 1st of April every year, that we are seeding as the projects go forward. And one of the issues that we do have, which is one of the reasons why Canody wasn't quite delivered as quickly as we would like, was through land negotiations, and that does take a wee bit of time as well. So having that year-on-year confidence that the funding is coming does open up projects that perhaps in the past we've not been able to consider.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Scott.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse there. Thanks, convener. I'd just like to echo Councillor Devine's comments about the spread of the projects, which is fantastic. Mr. Scott, I don't think you'll be surprised by my excitement about the Dromachley loan feasibility last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing the design. Do you know when that will be, roughly, the design?
We should have in the next couple of months some of the initial outputs from that design work to share, Councillor Scott. And yes, as you have touched upon, we've corresponded very often in terms of Dromachley loan and improvements that both of us wish to see there. It's the same answer to everybody else in that regard. There are great projects across the board, and it's about identifying the funding opportunities and making that real. But what I can commit to is wanting to take feasibility study and design as quickly as it can and actually get to implementing infrastructure on the ground. It is about that quality infrastructure, and it is about making it safe and accessible. So that's really what we can't take our eyes off in terms of this pipeline.
Can I just ask one other thing? The Brechin to Montrose walk-in cycling route, which again, you and I have corresponded, the amount of people that walk and cycle from Brechin to Montrose is incredible, and it's always been a fear of mine that, and others, that somebody will be hurt. So have you had any discussions with Caledonian Railway? I mean, I'm aware that that's obviously a working railway run by volunteers, but I'd spoken to John Gill recently, and he's very keen to have walking and cycling along the railway. So I wondered if that's something that you've... It
is something I'm in regular contact with John Gill. Spoke to him earlier today in that regard, and last week and probably the week before as well. So John is a very resilient and persistent character, but we've both identified there are opportunities in terms of what his aspirations are for his organisation, and ultimately how that may well feed into improving the links, particularly in this instance, between Montrose and Brechin, and in the opposite direction as well. So it is something that we are seeking to work together. And as I indicated earlier, that any community involvement, any organisations, any companies that we can be working with for improvements there, particularly when it comes to commuting. And I know from just spotting Councillor Brays on the screen, it very much was that possibility for a commuter link between Montrose and Brechin that was of particular relevance. And apologies to Councillor Brays if I've stolen your thunder by mentioning that.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, convener. And you're making a grand job so far. Well, a few comments. Mr. Scott, well, you didn't quite steal all my thunder, but a bit of spare. When it comes to the Montrose Brechin, or Brechin Montrose, as a former Brechin councillor, of course it's the ideal route, isn't it, for a commuter cycling and walking path, because it's relatively flat. No great challenge, and what, 9 miles long or something? You would think that if we're going to get people cycling to reasonably far away commutes, if it doesn't work on this, it's not going to work anywhere, and we better just pack the whole thing in. This is a brilliant project, and if it ties in with the Caledonian Railway, even better. Because it could be much less disruptive in doing the work. But we'll wait and see, obviously, for the study on that. Another comment is that I noticed project number 5 in Appendix 2, which is a path from Barnes of Craig down to Ferry Den. Well, I live at Barnes of Craig now, and one of my neighbours has very small children who will be starting school in the next 2 or 3 years, I suppose. And he's told me that there's no way his children will be walking down that road to Ferry Den School. Well, maybe now they might be. So this is what it's all about. And as a final comment, of course, this is all community driven. And the more involvement communities have in this, the better. And I would thoroughly recommend all community councils to get right up to their necks in this CWSR, because there's going to be money coming for considerable time into the future. There's a whole lot of work to be done. And these projects before us are just the tip of the iceberg of what's needed. So I hope community councils will be proactive and get stuck into this. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, have you got any comments on community councils getting right up to their necks in this?
They'd be very welcome to get engaged and involved with this, convener.
Excellent. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and you're doing an excellent job here, Mark. And this has been one of the best debates I've heard in the new term. It's been good to hear loads of people bringing in various comments, and the debate's been very interesting. With that in mind, that's what I'm starting with. I noticed Councillor Cowdy making the comments we've got to do, I think it was, I'll put it in my words, joined up thinking, and let's get things all linked together. So I think that's what we definitely do need to do. The first one that I can think of is, because I've been trying to do it for 10 years or 11 years in and around Carnoustie, because Carnoustie was the one that lost its funding to do linking round the town, joining Muirdrum via the ferry steps. And I know there is money available, so if we can get some joint funding into that, that would be ideal, because Carnoustie's been sitting with money from the Golf Links, ready to try and get that ferry steps link to Muirdrum sorted out. Yes, it's been disappointing the last 5 years, but I think we can now try and move forward positively. It's excellent to know that we have Councillor MacDonald in the chair now, and it's also great to see that we have Walter moving things forward as well. So with that in mind, it would be wonderful to see if we can get Crombie all sorted out. I still don't think we can still get round it yet. So if we're trying to get people to get round Forfarloch, can we maybe try and get people to get round Crombie Loch? I'm interested, someone mentioned about railway lines. Mark and myself will remember that over the last 5 years, it's been brought up at Maniki Community Council, the words of Community Council. There's a railway line up there that would make an excellent walk. So let's see what funding we can get for that. And finally, the last one is actually something that you'll be getting a letter from Carnoustie Community Council, because at their last meeting a week last Monday, the Curley in Carnoustie is still having problems, and we seemingly have a statutory duty to be able to do something with getting people safer into what was known as the Curley in Carnoustie. But that will be winging its way to you, Walter. But yeah, as we can say, there are plenty of different things that be going around in and around the Carnoustie area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. It has been of the new term, given that it's pretty much the first debate of the new term. So I wholeheartedly agree. We've got a little bit of homework to sort out as well from the previous agenda item, but are we happy to move on? I take it Councillor Braze is a legacy hand and Councillor Boyes is a legacy hand. That's fine. So we move to the recommendation then. So recommendation 1 is we note the amended programme of projects undertaken during 21-22. Do we note that?
Noted.
Noted.
Or to approve the programme of projects to be undertaken during financial 22-23. Do we approve that?
Approved.
And we note that the list of other projects identified through the CWSR consultation process is utilised as substitutes for the CWSR programme, of projects 22-23 and delegates authority to the service leader, roads and transportation, to make substitutions and to feed others into the pipeline of active travel projects as funding opportunities are presented. We know that.
Agreed. Noted.
Agreed.
Thanks to that big long sentence there with the sore throat, we need to move back to item 6, because what I didn't do was appoint a communities committee electing the convener of the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee. So we need to elect a convener, but given that we've not got a full complement of councillors for that position, I just seek some guidance from Donald as to what he suggests we do here, because I think when we maybe do a temporary chair for the first meeting, or Walter, do you want to come in?
If I may, convener, yes, it would be helpful to at least have a temporary convener. That would allow us to at least set the dates of the first one of the joint consultative committees, in lieu of not having the 6th member of the committee being identified. So if it was a temporary convener, that would allow us to do so.
Okay, Donald, can I just bring you in here and just check that we're doing this okay?
Yes, I'm comfortable with what Mr. Scott is suggesting.
I see that Councillor Fairweather has his hand up. Councillor Fairweather?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Obviously, the last convener, I actually moved that Councillor King from the opposition was in the chair. As far as a temporary chair for going forward, obviously with my experience over the last 15 years on the Harbour Board, I'd be quite happy to take that up until a proper chair is appointed.
Anybody else got any comments to make on that? I'd have no problems. It'd be okay with Councillor Fairweather being the temporary chair for item.
Good idea.
Seconder, convener.
Councillor Bell said she'd second, I think.
That'll do. Well, I was reminding you to second, but get a seconder, but that's fine. Sorry.
So, Councillor Fairweather, thank you very much. And I think, if anybody else wants to correct me, that's the first Communities Committee of the new term finished. And thank you very much for participating and putting up with me.
Well done, convener.
Well done.
Thank you, convener. Well done.
Good job.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop the live. Stop the